And welcome back. This is KTT4 this morning. Of course, we're looking at the big stories right across your dailies, but also interrogating where we stand today, Super Tuesday, as a couple of counties have been looked at with the tasks to meet the threshold needed to move the BBI amendment bill to the next level. So we'll be taking a keen eye on that particular issue. But also we're talking about political alliances and endorsements as we move forward into the year proper. In studio, Dennis Anyonka with me. Joining the conversation via video link, we have Mark Bichachi and Joy Mdivo as well. Joy, it's a question that's playing out right now. Is what we're seeing with the BBI what's going to inform political alliances in the future? We've already seen a meeting with Kifudha and Raila having him turn in terms of his position. Do you think probably very soon we'll have a Raila, Kibwana, Kitui type of alliance? Because they were all in that particular picture at that time. Is this where that's going after the referendum?
I think what Honorable Raila Odinga is trying to do is sort of couple together as many people as possible to support the BBI process. But it's not just about the BBI process, it's also about inclusion. Because you can see some of the people that was traditionally collaborating as principals, the core principals, are now no longer shammy, for lack of a better word. And in politics, you need to have allies and collaborators. Otherwise, your issues will just not as solid as you have expected. So I think in this particular, what we are seeing with Raborai is not just trying to cobble together people to assist him with the BBA, but is thinking on that people he can work with in his political ambition. 2022 is just next. So that conversation has already started, I'm sure. And so it's a matter of the gentlemen start to realign. Because we have seen the NASA divorce, we have seen how it's gone. So even though they are working together on BBI, he cannot count on his NASA principles to work with him next year. So in my mind, I'm thinking he's reaching out to as many new voices as possible to see if he can get new alliances, new strategic partnerships.
Mark, I'll have you in on this one as well, even as you look at where it stands moving forward. Is the BBI the stage for the next big political play? And if so, how do you see this in informing the next moves that will be made? As they say, no permanent friends, no permanent enemies in politics as it stands. But what do you think will be the key alliances to watch as we move to 2022?
Well, Jeff, first allow me to respond to a travesty that happened there before, where the good Wakili said that the Kenyan people are being forced. Now, I am wondering which military, which police unit with which guns and bullets were mobilized to get 4 million Kenyans to sign. Secondly, I'm wondering, all these county governments, has you seen the military camping around the county assemblies? It is very wrong to state propaganda on an analysis show where we are supposed to state the truth to the Kenyan people. It should not be allowed to happen. I want to see incidences documented that people were forced. And I am wondering where he's getting these statistics from. If he's wondering where I'm getting the statistics of the popularity of the BBI, I can tell you there are 4 million people who've signed it and more than 12 county assemblies which have passed it. And mark you, Baringo County, which didn't pass the BBI, has not been told that now they're not getting car grants simply because they didn't pass the BBI. If there's no quid pro quo, then this argument that it is a bribe, then Baringo County today should not be having its car grant being considered. So let us not lie to the Kenyan people. Now back to your question. Yes, the BBI and its outcome is going to form what is called the alliances that will move into 2022. One, because it is simply coming very close to that particular time. It's coming to very close to the elections. And number two, because if the people pass the BBI, then naturally they want to elect leaders who they believe also believe in the BBI, which is important. And we must remember Uhuru Kenyatta was pro the 2010 referendum. He was not anti, as Wakili had alluded to before. He was pro the referendum 2010. It is also the reason why he was trusted in as much as his deputy wasn't. Now, the key issue is here. Is are Moses Wetangula, Mudavadi, Kalonzo Musyoka enough of a force without Raila Odinga? That's really the question. And that's a question they have got to ask themselves, that can they go it alone without Raila Odinga? And then the question that is a subset of that is, can Raila Odinga forge a new alliance with the different players to take another stab at the presidency? And then the question further to that is, who then is William Ruto's ally? Who is going to be his deputy? Who's going to be his prime minister if the BBI goes through? So these are the critical questions that are going to play out, and that is going to be largely determined by the ilk of Kalonzo, Mudavadi, and the rest, and what they will choose to do. Will Kalonzo pull a watermelon at the last minute? Will Mudavadi choose to go the 2013 route to get his 300,000 votes, or is he going to go the 2017 route where they actually had an actual chance of leading the country? Those are the questions that remain to be seen, but whoever wins the BBI referendum will definitely form a coalition. Now, will we be forced to have a referendum? Wakili, in a forced country, you would not be saying the things you are saying on a free-to-air channel as you are. So you cannot be enjoying freedom and be forced at the same time.
Please take it to that point and have Wakili clarify his statement or give a rejoinder to what Mark has spoken about, in the sense that there's nothing being forced right here. No one has a gun to anybody's head. It's all free volition with matters BBI.
Jeff and Mark, perhaps, I do not know how you describe when you use the local administration, the local chiefs, your assistant chiefs, the county commissioners, in the process of collection of signatures. These people are guarded and they have deployment of administration police officers. They go there not as civilians, but in their capacity as, administrators who have been sent. When in my village, the chief speaks, everybody listens. In fact, when chiefs call for barazas, people stop going to the farms, because that is a matter of force. It's power. It's authority. It's government. If that is not then an aspect of force that is being applied, then I do not know what that is. That, for me, is what we say. It's not a free will. Because when people, all the ladies and everybody is told, now come for a meeting, because the government has said the local chief is coordinating and ensuring that signatures are collected, they will come and sign because the local chief has, this is a government document. Right. That is what I call for. It's not a free will. It's not where, Mark goes to the local community and, educates people and tells them this document is very good. Then they listen and they see Mark as the son of Bichache. Let me assume that is his son and his father. And they look at him not as a force, but as an educator, and make a decision to agree or disagree with him. That is not happening. We have seen instances of, some of the people who appear to be anti BBI, top leaders, being arrested and charges being preferred, which we question whether really, if they were not against the BBI, they could have been arrested and charged in the manner they have been charged in court. Because the issues that are being accused of are issues that have been in existence all along, when they appear to be in a close working relationship with the government, with the Jubilee as a coalition, as a political party, and therefore they were not, those criminal issues didn't arise. So when we see this is what we say, lack of free will to make a decision. When we are, it's on record, and this is clear that we have had Secretary General for Jubilee telling MCAs that we will punish you if you do not vote for this particular bill. What is that? If it's not intimidation. Okay. People are not going to make a decision saying they will, if I'm a member of Jubilee and I'm nominated, it was for nominated once, they'll say, okay, let me pass the bill, whatever. People will make a decision what it is. Right. So when we see this happening, then people are not going to make free, independent decisions. That is use of force, and that is not propaganda. If Mark wishes to call that propaganda, perhaps, then we need to redefine what propaganda is.
I want us to move this conversation forward. Joy, I want to come to you, of course, because we've also seen this week bring the aspect of political endorsements and probably the premium as to which they have. From where you stand, do these endorsements actually shape how one will have a successful bid at any political office as it stands, and especially now moving forward? Does that still hold? Do we have a certain person, if they say Joy Tosha, for instance, Joy is essentially in State House after that particular endorsement?
I don't think so. We've come full circle as a society. There was once upon a time, and it correctly points out that there was a certain level of, how do I put it, awe and wonder that we help our leaders with. Say something, people would be more likely to, for lack of a better word, obey. But I think the Kenyan society has become a little bit sophisticated. We have this TikTok generation that are now voters as well. And they are people who are very savvy, and they think and they ask questions. And many of them are not beholden with this, the second liberation, fought for independence, and all these other things that were used to whip up some emotions when I was younger, when I was a young voter. So there are some of those waves that were able to be generated back then that are very difficult to generate now because the demographic has changed. The people that you're dealing with are vastly different now. So even if you come with what we have, political sloganeering, you find that it doesn't get as much traction as it used to. So an endorsement per se may assist in some level with some voters, but for the greater majority of the voters that we have today, who were born after 1980, because 1980 was 40 years ago, and for many of them, they don't remember those issues of the clamor for multi-party and repeal of Section 2A. So you'll find that those ones will not be swayed in the same way. So an endorsement can be beneficial, but is not, I think, the gold ticket. You have also had leaders who have talked about, I'm not for an endorsement, I'm looking for the voice of the people. I'm looking for the endorsement from God. I'm looking from another X factor, because they've gotten to the realization where you cannot be politically lazy and expect to reap dividends from people, because the election thing with is vastly different. But there's something that Dennis talked about. I want to just touch on a little bit. The element of forcing people to support BBI. The good thing with this process is the elected leaders, we admit, can be beholden somewhere. We have seen the antiques, we have seen the theatrics. It's true, the optics don't look very encouraging as to the level of intellectual agility to deal with what's before them. Some of them look like they have been shepherded to a certain idea, and that's up to them. They deal with it. The good thing is that with Mwananchi, how we will know whether this is something they really want or not is at the ballot. And at that point, it will be secret ballot. So there'll be no worry about coercion or car grounds or whatnot, because the people have the final say. And so for Kenyans, that's my encouragement. You take your time, you understand what you want, forget about your MCA, forget about your political leader, and make up your mind. But for the MCAs now, from now the political party side, they have been empowered. They have been given a motor vehicle to go around, circumvent the entire ward. They better deliver. We expect to see them having a lot of activity in the ward. Kurudisha mkono. Like I saw one from Kisii yesterday saying, oh, now you've given me a car, but you've not given me mafuta. People, the deal was for car. The story for mafuta now we don't want to hear. We expect to see activity. Because at the end of the day, civic education will be the decider. Whether people back this or back this depends on how much civic education gets to them. And so far, the BBI has suffered from a crisis of people not knowing what's in it. So I'm hoping now that the MCAs have been brought on board, there are a lot more boots on the ground, that conversation will be had, and that Kenyans now will get a chance to make an informed choice.
What about, very quickly, Joy, before I go to Mark, the fact that even as you go through this particular process, when it does get to a referendum, the threshold is pretty low. So at that particular point in time, this being, being backed by the government, it's really home and dry once it gets there.
I don't think you can make that assumption, because once the referendum is being held, the first thing we do is turn out. For a referendum to be legitimate, you must have at least 20% of the registered voters turning out. So there's a threshold that must come out. Then of those that come out, then you're right, it's a simple majority. Even if just one vote, then the majority carried the day. So the threshold is, as you say, attainable. And in that case, we were having a discussion with someone, and I'm like, what's the worst that happens? When you look at the bill and then you look at the changes that are going to be expected, what's the worst that could happen? Kenya will have a huge weight bill. We have an opportunity, even after 2022, to decide, you know what, we don't like these changes. We're going back to 2020. There's nothing like forever. The things that I think it's a process that Kenyans had to go through to understand what does it really mean to change the constitution. But and some of those things now will be a discussion. Are those thresholds? Should we really take players or take it straight to the people? Should it come from the constitutional question, or we need to have and in the
okay. We need to fix a bit of a technical issue with Joe. Let me get to Mark on this as well, because Mark, from where you stand, even as we move this forward, we've heard of the fact that it was supposed to be 10 for the president, 10 for the DP. Clearly, from where we stand, anything could change, but we don't see that particular endorsement happening from the president to his number 2. That would be highly unlikely. And we don't see Raila Odinga endorsing his former alliance mates from NASA. Do you think these two co-principals endorse somebody as they go to 2022, from where you stand?
Well, there's a 50-50 chance in as far as I'm concerned. 50-50 in the sense that if William Ruto has fallen out of the graces of the president, and the president has made that abundantly clear. But the president is young. The president is invested in the future of this country. He has stated that he is interested in not leaving the country to a thief. So most likely, whether overtly or covertly, the president will definitely throw his weight behind a candidate. Now, why is this 50-50? That candidate could be his BBI brother, Raila Odinga, or it could be someone else who he feels is a safer pair of hands. And let's remember that Uhuru Kenyatta is not averse to giving his blessing to someone else. Remember, he famously handed over his ticket to Musalia Mudavadi for 24 hours before his mind was changed. Also, let us remember that these are leaders that enjoy a lot of political clout. They enjoy a lot of political support. And also, the moment is a moment of change. Half of the country is determined that Kenya should have a change of heart in terms of getting leaders who are not corrupt, leaders who have a clean track record. It is the reason why Muhisa Kitui is hitting our Twitter handles hard. But that is not enough. He needs a shot in the arm from probably a Raila Odinga or a Uhuru Kenyatta. So will that happen 50-50? Now, I heard about chiefs forcing people because they called them for a meeting, and that was not propaganda. I wonder how many of us who signed online, and I hear nearly 2.5 million signed online, how many chief meetings were held online? How many chiefs in Nairobi called us for a meeting? And being called for a meeting in the village to be informed of things, I don't know how that constitutes force, because what was the result and the price for those who refused to sign? Do you have any of your villagers, Wakili, who are in jail for refusing to sign? Do you have anyone who died of hunger because the aid package from the chief was not delivered? What was the cost of not signing? Because I'm very sure there was one who rebelled. That's why your statement is untrue, it is unfounded, and the BBI is a government project, and the government has used resources and informed the Kenyans using government resources, just the same way Brexit was done. The government paid for the Brexit referendum, paid for the anti-Brexit thing.
He had said, Mark,
yes,
something else Wakili had pointed out was that even the SG for Jubilee did read the Riot Act for the MCAs prior to their voting in the assembly. So really, it was one way. You either vote this way or face disciplinary action. And we've seen how swift the Jubilee Disciplinary Committee is. Did they have any other option but to vote yes?
But my friend, let me educate you on political party politics. When Jacob Zuma's time came to leave the presidency, it is the ANC which removed him from presidency, okay? When you join a political party, there's something called a party position, okay? Which as a leader of majority, as an MCA, as an MP, you are expected to follow the party position. Let me go back again to Brexit. You remember when Theresa May was Prime Minister, there were a number of leaders who disagreed with her. And because they disagreed with her, they had to resign. It is only in Kenya where we consider it dictatorship when members of a political party are expected to toe the political party line. That is what is supposed to happen. You understand? I wonder if you want to buy a shamba in your house, and then your deputy wants, your spouse wants to buy it in Mombasa, you want to buy it in Kayole, and your children want to buy it uko kwetu in Malaa. So my question is, where will you buy the land? You see, at the end of the day, a group of people does need direction, it does need leadership, and by the way, heko to the SC for doing this. This idea that you can belong to a political party and then be campaigning for UDA and be a green when you're supposed to be a leftist, it's not kosher.
Yes, you've heard the position that even Mark takes on this, and as you answer that, the question also is raised: if indeed we can go down this particular path, where the SG can read the Riot Act before you vote, what's the essence of having a chief whip and a majority leader who essentially should be the one to try and convince you as to the position you should take?
What I understand as a political process, we have the whips in the houses, and they're not supposed to force. They're actually supposed to convince you and persuade you towards a particular direction, because then we should have a dichotomy and a clear positions with regard to independence of your thought process as an elected leader and your allegiance to the people and towing to a party line, because then there's a conflict. Because at the end of the day, the fact that you were elected through a political party, you presented your candidature through a political party, does not mean that the people did not elect you. You actually have your allegiance to the people, what they need, and if they disagree with what the political party has directed, then I think it should be it should be allowed that you are able to pursue the ideas of the people, because you represent the people. You are not in a parliament or in an elected position to represent your political party. Of course, you need to take into account the political interests, but you actually are a representative of the people. Mm-hmm. That becomes the issue. And that is why, for a political party to achieve its agenda, then you have whips who are supposed to ensure that they are able to persuade you in a direction, you are able to cross bridges, and you're able to harmonize a few issues. That also brings me to the issue where Mark is talking about those who signed online. Yes, people signed online. But you see, if perhaps we left the online signatures only for verification, perhaps we would not have even made the threshold. Perhaps we would be talking a different story. When you talk about the locals and who went to the chiefs and how many, what happened to those who refused to sign, I think Mark has grown largely in the urban area. He seems not to appreciate that the far away you get to the village, the more powerful the local administrators are. In Nairobi, the chiefs we may not even know where their offices are. But in the local community, in the rural areas, chiefs, assistant chiefs, village elders, even Nyumba Kumi are very powerful. My friend, this is an area where somebody's spouse will be sent away because the local tribunals had, and the Nyumba Kumi initiative, they felt that this particular, lady who is married to a home is not well mannered. And that will be it. That is the verdict. Even the courts, we do not go to the courts. People don't have as much civic education as those of us in the urban areas. So perhaps it's important that we appreciate that that is not what we need in any legal process. The question then we need to, even in answering this, to re-examine, is BBI a purely political process or is it a constitutional legal process? Is BBI, Mark is saying, is a government process? Really, does the government require then to pursue constitutional amendment? And if that is the case, is the manner in which this constitutional amendment commenced and followed through the right way to do it? Because what I understand, and I think unless my memory is failing me. BBI is started as a handshake initiative to solve a political problem between two groups. That is the NASA team, led by Raila Odinga, and the Jubilee team, led by Uhuru Kenyatta. In fact, immediately after the handshake, there were disagreements. There were murmurs that the other players were not involved. And they said, okay, bring us on board so that we together can look for a political solution. Okay. That we didn't see it happening. With time, it quickly moved into a 9-point agenda, BBI process, and it took off. Okay. And there's been all these questions as to the legitimacy, and these issues are not new. So ultimately, it turns out that we have proposals that are now constitutional amendments, not to solve the initial problem, which has something to do with our volatile electoral process. So when you look at all this, then we keep asking, if it was a legal amendment of the Constitution, because now we have had arguments saying when the first Constitution, when the 2010, this current Constitution was passed, there were agreements that the Constitution was good 80%, 20% needed to be fixed. Is BBI solving, responding to 20%? Do we even identify what that 20% was? Those becomes the questions, and that is how, when we now look at even what is being proposed, we are questioning whether really it's making sense in our current setup, whether we should be able to have a wider discussion and a wider debate on which way as a country should we move.
We'll have to draw the curtains on this particular conversation at that particular point in time. I think what I'll also do is make sure Dennis and Mark, I exchange your numbers so that you can also have this conversation offline and get a meeting of minds and build a bridge on that front. Dennis Anyoka, thank you so much for your time. Asante sana as always. Mark Bichachi, many thanks for joining the conversation via Vigilink. Joy Mdivo, many thanks as well for being part of the show this morning. Asante sana for your time as well. We're going to take a short break at this point. When you come back after the break, we get interactive. So keep those SMSs coming in. If you want to tweet us, of course, that handle is at KT24TV. We're back after the break. Don't go too far.